Hey guys, my name is Savannah J. Foley and this is a vlog for Let the Words Flow. And today I'm going to talk about failing better. No, not feeling better, failing better. Rejection is the constant companion of writers. Whether you're being rejected by reviewers, agents, editors, publishers, your friends, or the muse itself. Rejection has a negative connotation, but today I'm going to challenge you to think about rejection in a new light. Rejection is like the game Battleship. You toss out your shots, and maybe you won't hit something. But that's good. That tells you where your target isn't. It's the same with submissions, whether you're submitting to a magazine, an agent, or an editor. All that getting a rejection means is that your target isn't here. That reminds me of a Barbara Kingsolver quote, which I'm going to read to you now. You've probably heard it before. This manuscript of yours that has just come back from another editor is a precious package. Don't consider it rejected. Consider that you've addressed it to the editor who can appreciate my work, and it has simply come back stamped not at this address. Just keep looking for the right address. Also, just because you get a rejection doesn't mean that your writing itself is bad. It could be that the person you submitted to has terrible taste, or they weren't in a good mood that day. Or perhaps your writing was good, but it wasn't right for the place that you submitted to. A couple of years ago, I decided that I really wanted to get into a literary magazine because I had heard that you should build up your writing credits for when you start querying so agents will take you seriously. So I had a story, I thought it was a really awesome story, and I sent it to the Paris Review. And I got a form rejection. My story was, and is, kind of kick-ass, but it wasn't the right thing for the Paris Review. Was my writing bad? It's possible, but the more likely reason that I got a rejection is that it was kind of this weird coming-of-age horror short story, and I don't think the Paris Review editors really thought that that was the kind of story that belonged in their magazine. Almost the exact same thing happened to me last week. In case you didn't know, my book Antebellum, which was published on Fiction Press originally under the name of Woman's World, has been out on submission for a couple months now. It's been with a couple editors. And last Friday, my agent wrote to me to say that we had gotten a rejection letter. And the only reason she was writing to tell me that we got rejected is that it was an awesome rejection letter. The editor told us that she loved the story and she loved the characters and she couldn't wait to come to work every day and read it, and she'd be happy to read any other young adult stories that I wrote and submitted in the future. But while she loved the story, she felt that the issues it dealt with may have made it not really a young adult novel, and ultimately it wasn't right for her publishing house. So my question to you is, did I fail? Yes, I failed. I got a rejection. However, this is the closest I've come to being published ever in my life, so you might say that while I'm failing better than I ever have before. I was thrilled to receive that rejection letter. It made my weekend. It told me I was doing something right, even if I wasn't going to be published right at that moment. And you know what? I was thrilled to receive that form rejection letter even from the Paris Review, because it told me that I was already doing something right. I was already writing, I was already submitting, and that rejection letter told me that I had come farther than I ever had before in the publishing process at that time. To all you young writers out there, keep your rejection letters. Cherish them. They show that you're already doing something amazing. As Stephen King wrote in his autobiography/instruction book called On Writing, when he started the submission process, he hammered a huge nail into his bedroom wall, and every time he got a rejection, he would push it through that nail, so he just had this stack of rejection letters on his wall, and they inspired him. They showed him how much he'd already done, and gave him the inspiration to keep going till he could finally get an acceptance letter. And while I may not necessarily advocate hammering a hole into your wall, I do advocate using your rejections as inspiration for you. Remember, it's like the game Battleship. Your rejections show you where your success is not, and create sort of an outline over where your success is and will be. So my challenge to you is to not think of failure as this one big, absolutely end-all dark pit of despair. Failure isn't always bad. Sometimes failure shows you how far you've come or how far you need to go. Failure is like a ladder. You get form rejection, form rejection, form rejection. You edit your work, you get another form rejection. You get a form rejection with a comment on it. Then maybe the next time you get a full page of comments, and then maybe the next time you get accepted. It's a process. In conclusion, you can't take rejection personally. It's not like you asked the publishing industry out on a date and they looked you up and down and said, no way. It's a business. They may be not rejecting your writing itself, they may be rejecting your topic, or they may be rejecting your main character's name, or they may be rejecting their own bad mood, or maybe they just weren't feeling it. It wasn't to their taste. It doesn't mean you're a bad writer, and it doesn't mean you wrote a bad story. It just means you got a rejection. And rejection happens to the best of us. Not nearly enough to the worst of us, as I'm sure you might have noticed. I could mention some names, but definitely to the best of us. Consider the following. John Kennedy O'Toole was once told his novel isn't really about anything. He won a Pulitzer. John le Carré was told he hasn't got any future. Yasmin Galenorn had 600 rejections before her first book contract. James Patterson was rejected 26 times. Ursula K. Le Guin was told that The Left Hand of Darkness was unreadable. William Golding's Lord of the Flies, I'm sure you've heard of it, was rejected 20 times. Let's not forget J.K. Rowling, whose, oh my god, it sold so many books, Harry Potter, was rejected over 100 times. And finally, C.S. Lewis, who you might be familiar with because he wrote, the Narnia series, was rejected 800 times before his first sale. So you know what? Until you've been rejected 800 times, I don't want to hear about it. After that 800th rejection, then we can talk. But until then, you are on the hook to keep trying. And I'm sure that your high school had a poster that said the only quitters are those who never try. But in case you've forgotten, I'm going to read you another quote. By George E. Woodbury. Defeat is not the worst of failures. Not to have tried is the worst failure. And that's true. If you're a young writer, as long as you're making an effort to get published, you've already succeeded in my book. Maybe it'll take you a couple of years to get published. Maybe your work needs a couple more revisions, or the agent isn't out there yet that's right for you, or no publisher is revolutionary enough to take on your project. But it will happen if you're dedicated to being a writer. I don't know how many times I can keep saying this. It will happen. It will happen. You've got to believe me. So keep trying. Keep getting closer. You can fail. It's okay. But fail better than you ever have before. All right, that's all I got to say. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to read Let the Words Flow, and I'll talk to you later. Bye, guys.